good afternoon, everyone. Would like to welcome you to the NATHEALTH Expert Series. Every Thursday at 4 p.m., we meet, we talk about, we pick a subject that is relevant for the sector as a whole. And we bring in eminent speakers, experts to throw light and help us better understand a subject that affects many of us in the healthcare sector. Today, we are very fortunate to be taking up an issue which cuts across the length and breadth of healthcare sector, which is coping with stress and anxiety, both at workplace and at home. And we have two eminent experts today, speakers who will help us throw a light on this subject. And it's my privilege to be introducing the two speakers today. First and foremost, Mr. Sri Kumar, founder, CEO, and bibliotherapist from the Critical Dialogue. He's also the founder and partner of Equinox Consultants and a guest faculty in the Reserve Bank Staff College, SEBI, National Institute of Securities Markets, SVP National Police Academy, and CRIT Center for Research on Rural and Industrial Development. As the founder of the Critical Dialogue, Sri is a bibliotherapist with over 30 years of experience in using the modality of literature, fiction, and storytelling as a means of therapy. He helps people in inner work which translates towards better acceptance, higher self-esteem, well-bonded relationships, and joyful living. He specializes in using these modalities to help individuals both in their work and family life. As an executive coach and counselor, Sri is passionate about helping individuals get a handle on their emotional well-being, enhancing the quality of their relationships, personal growth, and transformation. He has designed and developed powerful psychometric tools that help assess and counsel people on their mental wellness, relationships, parenting, dealing with anxiety, stress, anger, and teen coaching. A very warm welcome, Sri, to the NATHEALTH Expert Series. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. It's my privilege.
It's my privilege to also introduce the second speaker today, Mr. Manish Agarwal. Mr. Manish has over 25 years of work experience in India at leadership positions in global multinational organizations like Citibank, Dell, and Deloitte, working in the areas of financial services, strategy, business research, new product development, and operations. Manish is a BTech from IIT Kanpur, class of 1992, and a postgraduate from IIM Ahmedabad, class of 1995. He's a speaker at various industry forums and has been quoted in leading business media like Economic Times, Reuters, Yahoo, Business Standard, Financial Times, etc. Manish is a visiting faculty at SP Jain Institute of Management at Singapore, Dubai, where he took courses in decision-making and leadership. He has taught at leading business schools in India, like IIM Indore, IIM Udaipur, IIM Raipur. He's also in the corporate advisory board of IIM Udaipur. Manish is a heartfulness trainer, a meditative technique based on Raj Yoga, and he has been practicing meditation for the last 30 years. A very warm welcome to you, Manish. It's great to have you in this expert series.
Thanks, Siddharth. It's my privilege to be here.
Thank you. So let's kick this discussion off. And my question, I'm going to pick on a few areas and would like both of you to kind of help us demystify, decode these areas. We have heard a lot about anxiety, stress, fatigue. They don't happen over a day. They build up over time. What are some of the signals, whether visible or invisible, that we ought to be watching out for? And are there certain signs by which we can pick things up before it becomes too late? So I would request Sri for you to first come in, followed by Manish on this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. In fact, I was just thinking about the idea and the concept of stress. And as you said, it's been there in existence for a long time. In fact, as far back as 1978, Pines and Maslach actually did a research and brought about this concept of workplace-related stress, because that's where my expertise lies as well. And then leading to burnout. Now, there are, if you have to look at symptoms or related to stress, we can actually categorize them into four broad areas. One is in terms of your thoughts, the thinking process. The other is emotions. Third is body, and the behavior. So these are the four areas in which typically you can identify triggers of stress or some symptoms which come in. So if you look at, let's say, thinking, if you are finding yourself having difficulty in focusing on tasks, for example, you're not able to maintain your focus for long durations, and you get distracted quite easily. So that's one area which comes under the thinking or thoughts area of stress. The other thing is in terms of very interesting, and in fact, there's a lot of work which I'm doing around this, is the cognitive dissonance. And this is very important to understand from the um, a perspective of stress occurring in even young individuals today, young working professionals. So you hear nowadays people at the age of 30, 25, in fact, going through stress, burnout, as well as even various ailments. And one of the aspects is more in terms of the dissonance which happens in terms of thinking, what they believe in, what they were nurtured with in terms of the ideas of the world around them, and when they land up in the workplace, there is a huge mismatch. What they expected versus what is the reality. In fact, and that's the primary cause of stress. If you look at it, the lack of preparedness for them as well. If you, the demands of the work far exceed the capabilities or the resources which they have. And that's the definition of stress itself, if you have to look at it in a simplistic term. So the dissonance is one more thing which is affecting people as to what I expect and what is the reality. And it is accentuated today with the highly connected and digital world as well. So people are totally confused and unable to think clearly, and a feeling of loss in the sense that a going blank kind of thing, which we have to talk about if we say in terms of thinking. Emotionally, if you look at it under the category where, easily identifiable is if you're frequently feeling irritable or getting angry outbursts, or you have the fear which comes in and you can sense it in terms of whether you are capable, not capable, and so on. Mostly the fear is in terms of being able to deal with the challenges which is posed to you on a daily and, in fact, not daily, I would say by the second today. That's the speed at which things are moving today. The other is in terms of emotional exhaustion. People do not have the time to sit with their emotions and process it. In fact, we are actually more intent on quick fixes and quick solutions. And there is a huge industry on, positivity, motivation, etc. So what happens is the moment you state a problem, uh, immediately there is a solution which comes in without really allowing the person to process it. It's almost like when the child baby falls down, we are quick to go and console the baby without even allowing it to process and learn how to deal with those emotions. And today you find in workplace many have landed up where they are not able to meet with the demands of the workplace. So if I have to say that, that is also linked to, there are several factors, but it's also linked to our education and how education is preparing people to take up workplace related challenges. So that's one which comes in. Body, I think everyone knows about it, and I'm sure Manish will add more to it. But simple signs like aches and pains, your fatigue, unable to sleep well, and I think one of the key symptoms which you can identify is anything which is related to your GI and the bladder. In fact, that's where the immediate signals, I would say, come in, because if you're anxious, you have they say the gut feel. So the feel is always starting at the gut. And then you have those infections around those areas. And in fact, just today I was saying that, uh, it's your stomach ulcers do not occur because of the way you eat, but it is the way, it is eating your mind, basically the stress which eats your mind. So that is one. Weight gain and rapid weight loss. These are some of the very early signs. And nowadays, in my conversations with corporate executives, people do complain about hair fall and other issues as well. And we find that at home. So that's one which we talk about in terms of body. Also, to quickly, before I ask Manish to also share what he can identify as some of the things, is the behavioral dimensions, which are very, very important for corporates also to understand, especially with regards to workplace. One which is happening is presenteeism. What it means basically is uh, people are pushed, pressurized to attend office even if they are unwell. And that is affecting not only their health, physical health, but their mental health. And that's taking a toll on them and also the productivity in the organization. The other thing which is coming up is what we call as the opposite of it, absenteeism. And organizations can see it as a early warning signal. If people are getting absent from work, and absenteeism is not just in terms of physical, we are also talking about switching off, forgetfulness in terms of the deadlines and the deliverables which they have. So that is one which organizations can be sensitive to. People can see it as an early warning sign. Lack of engagement, impulsivity, your defensiveness when somebody is suggesting something new, the resistance which comes and you become defensive is all an early warning sign of the advent of stress. So a lot of people, when we talked about even work from home, people said work from home has brought in stress. Not really. In fact, work from home was only one of the challenge. In fact, it has been accumulating over years, and people were just not ready to deal with the change scenario. So I think, and one last thing which I would like to say is postponing or procrastinating. And if you are having that as one of the behaviors which you can identify, that you frequently postpone things and you find people doing that, it is coming out of the fear. And when you do that over a period of time, when there is a lot of pending baggage, it leads to obviously the stress of work. So as I said, if we can actually look at tackling it from 4 dimensions, not just one. I was just asking this question earlier to somebody that, are you stressed? And when someone talked about the physical, ailments which the person has, the person said, no, 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 not really. I'm all cool. But the only thing is that, people do not realize that the stress need not be always coming up as a physical thing. It can be a mental thing as well. There's a lot of talk around the mental wellness as well. So emotions, your thoughts, your body, and the behavior are key signals which you get from time to time on a daily basis. And to answer your question, is there any way to do that? There are mechanisms by which you can assess the energy and stress levels of people. There is biofeedback. Obviously, the healthcare industry is giving that quite a bit. But apart from that, yeah, there are assessments which can do an energy level audit for people, and by which we can actually, uh, you know, uh, identify these symptoms much earlier than it becomes difficult to deal with.
Thank you, Shri. A lot of questions coming in as we are speaking, which we'll try to take at the end. But Manish, just a quick, add on to what Shri said, and just to dig a little deeper, if unmitigated, this element of stress, what does it lead to, and is there a point of no return?
Yeah, yes, there could be points of no return, and also the reaction of different individuals can be different, and the thresholds are different. So there are individuals who can handle stress for very, very long times, cope up with it, and react differently compared to other individuals who may have a short circuit much earlier. And these short circuits have had some, in my own experience, some very disastrous consequences. And do remember, this problem is not just limited to working professionals. It is also now very clearly visible in teenaged children. And I have had actual instances of people within my network where teenagers have committed actual suicide. They jumped off from the 10th floor just because something that he wanted did not happen. The father said no. So essentially, if you look at stress, there are three major drivers of stress. One is financial, the other is health, and third is relationships. Now, in particular, in teenagers, largely it's around relationships, financial and health. In some cases, it might be there, but largely it's driven by. Now, the challenge is that, as we discussed earlier, the thresholds are different. Somebody had a threshold where something was denied, he just couldn't take it, jumped off the 10th floor, and somebody would have just laughed it off saying it has been denied. Now remember, stress is never caused. While we always relate stress to these three factors, in reality, it is not caused by these factors, because these factors sometimes are unchangeable. You cannot change those factors. What causes stress is essentially our own reaction, the individual's reaction to some of the issues that may be happening outside. If the reaction is different, stress levels and the handling of stress will be very different. So while on a solution side, there are different methodologies to tackle this, the one thing that probably the health industry may need to think about is, how do I train the mind in order to react differently to the same trigger? If the mind can be trained, and there are, remember, very sophisticated Indian theories which deal with the mind, which tell us how the mind works, and they can be experimentally not only examined but acted on in ways which help the person react differently. It does not mean that the external world anything changes, but it helps the person react differently. And in medical parlance, you can say that person is able to cope up with stress better if he or she trains his mind to react differently to the same trigger which is causing stress. Now, some of the behaviors, behaviors I would, or the triggers by which that a person is under stress, I think we can segregate in two parts. One is what the individual knows, and second is what people around him may know. And it's more important for the individual, because the initial signs of stress are known only to the individuals. They manifest later to the outside world or to people close to that person. And the individual sign of stress is repeated thinking or brooding about the source of stress. If there is repeated brooding over a prolonged period of time, chances are that this person is showing some signs of stress. I think she brought about absence from work, very important, very relevant. Remember, absence per se is not so critical. What is important is unplanned absence. If the unplanned absence of a particular employee from work is frequent, then probably one of the drivers could be the stress that the person may be undergoing as a result of largely relationships in the office. Now, the medical signs are fairly simple, but most people don't go to that, which is typically a person under stress will start showing blood pressure type of signs. But most people will not probably go to that level and sort of get the blood pressure checked unless until they have equipment at home or they have a prior history of blood pressure.
So thank you for grounding some of the core issues. Before we look at solutioning, maybe could you touch upon 2 or 3 points around really the as-is scenario, the way you have outlined? What are some of the desirable, let's fast forward a decade ahead. What are the broad underpinnings around which the solutions are going to evolve? As a society, India is growing, and the economy is growing fast. The rapid movement of the workforce. It's a relatively very young demographics in India, which will fast move through the middle ages, and they're really stress-prone areas. So this is not an issue that is going to get behind us very quickly. We need concrete solutions. What are some of the core underpinnings around which the solutions have to evolve? Maybe we start with Manish first here and then come back to Shri on this. Thank you.
So I've been largely operating in an area where the solution has been more effective if it has been proactive, and which therefore means saying that we operate in a way that the cause, our reaction to the stress driver or to the stress trigger is modified. And one of the very, as I told you, there are very sophisticated theories of the mind which sort of exist in traditional Indian literature, in both in Ayurveda and other forms of living. And these theories of mind can also be practically observed by experience, which means that the mind can be trained in certain ways by which its reaction to an external event is made more normal rather than stress prone. It does not mean that the person will be ineffective in the workplace, but that the reaction is in such a way that it solves the problem rather than just causing potential stress, and also modifying expectations which are more realistic. So in teenagers in particular, what I'm observing is that the expectation is very, very sometimes flawed, or not only flawed, but probably I would say they are not really trained, and some of the or counseled probably, because some of the sources of stress are coming from things which are probably very, very immaterial in the larger context or canvas of life. As an example, social media, a lot of times I see children being under stress because the post that they posted has less likes than somebody else. I mean, it's at that level. So the point I'm trying to make is that what I have found largely effective is a very proactive method to train the mind in such a way that it reacts in a much more normal way to situations in the ground, because life will bring situations which do not match with our expectations. And if we can train our mind to react differently, that can itself lower our stress levels and lead to a more joyful life.
Shri, would you like to elaborate a little bit?
Yes. In fact, you asked in terms of what are the underpinnings. One thing which all of us need to work towards is, the days of IQ, EQ are over. We are even moving towards two important things. If I have to talk about digital quotient in families, what I mean by that is how do you consume digital? Because digital is here to stay. There is no doubt about it. We are not going to escape it. We cannot close it. Now, there has to be a concerted effort from organizations and society at large in terms of building up the digital quotient of the public at large, whether it is in family, in schools, in workplace also. How do you consume media? That is the intelligence which we need to work on. The other thing which I think it is already there and people are talking about it. You find it in news as well in terms of the happiness index and happiness quotient. And in fact, one of the experiments which we did in one of the organizations here in Hyderabad was that, how people enter the office and they click a button and it's kind of a feedback again uh, as to how they feel at that moment when they enter and when they exit, how are they feeling? And to our surprise, we found that, because it is data based again, that, by the time people ended work, at about 70% of the people were not the same as it started before. So that leads me to answering the question which came up with one of the participants here as to what can I do at workplace. What are the needs? Basically, we have to look at it from four basic human needs, or a few basic needs. Need to be understood, need to be respected, need to be valued, need to be cared for. These are some of the human needs which people come with. Now, when they don't find that in workplace or at home as well, it is bound to cause that kind of, like as Manish was mentioning, in terms of friction in relationships. And one of the primary factors of workplace related stress is relational, anything to do with interpersonal relationships. And one of the important behaviors everyone must learn, and in the Indian context, it is much more needed, is the assertiveness. One's ability to stand up for their rights at the same time respect others' rights too. So typically on a continuum, if you look at it from passive to aggressive, assertiveness will fall somewhere in between. And right from schools, unfortunately, culturally, if you look at it, a lot of questions do come in that, can we do assertiveness coaching in organizations? It's the need. The problem is that you are already getting a fully formed product in the workplace. And it is very difficult to change once the malaise has set in to people. It's not easy. So it has to start very early in schools, as Manish was mentioning, early stages of one's life. And as a society, I think one definite coaching which needs to happen at home, because people learn these behaviors from parents and the family. When I say caregivers, that would be the right word. People who are around the children at home need to also understand how to be assertive so that they learn, and when they go back and start working, they are able to exhibit the same behavior. So assertiveness for sure is one behavior which people need to work on. The other thing which people are unable to do and they always come up with in terms of problem is lack of time. Now, people need to understand their priorities. It's, you can't be assertive if you don't know your priorities, you don't know your purpose, you don't know why you wake up in the morning and show up every day. If you are not clear about it, there's no way you can be, dealing with work in a more effective manner. So, learning to prioritize, teaching people how to prioritize work is a very important element if I have to look at it from the solution side of it. And a lot of people say that I'm stressed, I don't have time. And I think this is a complaint which we are hearing all of the time. People need to learn when to disengage as well. A lot of times, organizations are teaching people engagement. How do we get them more engaged? I am actually giving a contrarian perspective. Teach people how to disengage, when to disengage. And you would see that you would have a happy workplace. People are actually, there is another thing which is happening is, apart from presenteeism, there is something called leavism, the new term which is coming up. That is, people are actually stretching their work. They are unable to leave their work at any point in time. Thanks to the digital devices, especially in the healthcare industry, if you look at it, doctors, my son is a practicing doctor, so it's always on culture, which is building up, always on. And it is being promoted also heavily. But it is having a serious effect on people's work-life balance. If you look at it, you're always getting in the incoming pings. You have back-to-back meetings. You have mails coming in. You have social media posts. You have so many things and overwhelmed with information. And that's why I bring back the concept of digital intelligence or digital quotient. So if I have to put one behavior which people need to work on, and I think both at home, because I do a lot of these work with families and parents, and I find that we are either being very passive or aggressive. So the oscillation is between a passive aggressive behavior. Very rarely people have that assertiveness and they don't understand it. And this is one behavior if they can learn. I think a lot of issues which pile up to cause stress can be mitigated. This is definitely one. There are other issues, in terms of why people get under stress, and that's a larger area. In fact, I have been involved with global organizations on, let's say, workplace harassment and bullying, and particularly in the healthcare sector, this is something which is deep embedded right from the medical school when the kids go and join the profession. They are subjected to high levels of bullying and harassment at all levels, from peer groups, from seniors, and from even the people who are supposed to teach and guide them. And so they are already what we call as in the healthcare sector, it is called the compassion fatigue. People are dealing with challenges on a daily basis. And by the time they reach the hospitals where they are supposed to give care to patients, they are in no position. They are totally stressed. And the suffering is of the patients because there can be decision making problems for healthcare workers and caregivers, anxiety, and in fact, more and more people in the healthcare industry are suffering from stress related issues. And in fact, as Manish said, it is a ticking time bomb. At any point in time, it can explode. And the biggest casualty will be the patient who needs their support. So I would say harassment, bullying, the work time, unable to deal with that, the pressure on work and the workload is also a recent Deloitte survey actually said that uh, uh, the workload is also one of the factors, and not being capable of dealing with those. Most of the competency, then you come into various other discussions. I think we need to look at it from a holistic perspective. And workplaces, especially in the healthcare, I think all the more important because people are on the edge. And the pandemic actually gave us a clear signal in terms of how stretched the healthcare system was in the country. In fact, I can talk about in my house, I was so worried for my son because the work hours stretched to 48 hours at a stretch at any point in time. And here is a person who is supposed to be a caregiver, but he's totally at a loss, walking around like a zombie. And I think as a system, as a healthcare industry, there are sectoral problems as well, which cause stress. So that's why I said that it's so much to deal with. But if we can start with some simplistic solutions like behavioral change, habit change, learning to deal with your priorities, and a little bit of self awareness in terms of what you can and what you can't, because that is what will build your digital intelligence as well. Social media can give you a lot of things. And I think that is where ideas like meditation or self-awareness programs really make a lot of difference. Uh, just to conclude this part of it, the now cliched saying that, being comfortable in your own skin, what it actually means is being more self-caring, self-accepting, becoming more self-aware can mitigate a lot of stress-related disorders. Stress is only the outcome of a long-drawn dissonance which we have between the reality and what we have been expecting. And once we are aware, I think a lot of these tools which Manish mentioned in terms of even yoga, meditation, mindfulness, these are some of the things which really can be of great help.
Great.
One, sorry, go ahead, Siddharth.
Okay. So great perspectives. So Sri, you specialized in the workplace environment, and Manish, you focus a lot on home and the stress levels at home, particularly with the focus on the younger part of the population, the children particularly. In terms of really being able to, formalize or institutionalize the support system around you, around the home and around the workplace, what are some of the elements you think that needs to be brought, together? And ultimately, the ecosystem probably is there in bits and pieces. It has to be made stronger, more robust. And what do you think some of the levers really are that would move the creation of that support ecosystem, which ultimately makes the workplace and home more successful? I mean, more safe and more stress-free. Thank you.
Yeah. So if we look at the ecosystem, I mean, remember the stress is a very individualized problem. I mean, it affects a large number of people, but the problem is very specific to an individual. And therefore, some of the solutions, though not all, will come actually from the individual, in the way that person's self-awareness, in the way the person chooses to react, in the way that person has certain expectations or lack of it. One of the things that I personally have tried, and it has worked very well, and we are promoting it very strongly amongst younger folks, is what I call as digital detox. Now, essentially what it says is that for a certain period of time, which could be 7 days, 15 days, depending on the individual's choice, they will not just respond to anything which is not on social media or on any electronic platform. They will neither observe or go through any electronic communication or social media post, which is not in the nature of either a professional or a personal obligation. And in some cases, individuals actually do digital detox for a day or two completely, which means they just hang up on all electronic devices, say for 2 days, 3 days, depending on their situation and their capacity. So some of these methods have to be devised by the individual, because the coping mechanisms to stress also depends on the individual, how the individual copes with it, because the same solution may not work with somebody else. The other part, as far as the institutionalization part of is concerned, I think the support system in corporates or at the workplace presently, I think, do not recognize, and this is especially true of the healthcare industry, that there is a limit beyond which a person cannot be expected to work. And a very good example as of now, while we are talking, is NHS. So the NHS system is in a complete breakdown right now, primarily because the number of workers required is not enough to service the volume. And if you go in, even in India, if you look at successful doctors, I mean, to get an appointment with a doctor is very difficult. I mean, and since some successful doctors in Delhi, I've seen people actually applying pressures and pulls to get an appointment. So very clearly, the institutional support or the institutional mechanisms now need to be evolved, where the expectation from the individual has to be tempered, which is in line with that person's abilities, willingness, and capabilities. And here, where the expectation mismatch occurs is that very often highly ambitious individuals tend to take on more than they can handle. And if you look at, there's one question in the question box from one of the participants. Why is it that your managers are giving you more work, or junior managers and middle managers are getting more work? Simply because the task part of every work has to be done by junior and middle managers. And the leadership is largely in the strategizing and conceptualizing mode. And after they have conceptualized, they will just pass it on downstream. They may or may not have the resources in terms of the human element and the supporting infrastructure to execute those decisions. And it's only when the mismatch is there, where even the junior manager, the middle manager is not able to prioritize, as she pointed out, and stand up and say, sorry, I can do this, but I will not be in a position to finish this, say, by this particular deadline. That is a matter of judgment and also some maturity.
So just to also continue the chain from where Manish said, one thing which when we are talking about digital intelligence or digital quotient, one aspect which we need to look at it when we talk about stress related or anxiety related issues, denial should not be an approach to resolve these issues. We need to let people know how to confront it and how to process it. Now, when we look at the organizational perspective on the same, in terms of the workplace, because some of the questions are related to that, employee wellness or happiness, employee wellness programs have to be a strategic initiative. It cannot anymore be something which we just nice to talk about. In fact, it has to come on the table of going forward. If we have to look at advising organizations, do we talk employee wellness as a strategic initiative, or we just do it as a reactionary stuff? Pandemic was one of the times when we actually realized that we were more reactionary than, and organizations are still suffering. So one thing which organizations should, and I think some of the organizations have started taking cognizance of that, is to make it integral to the strategy, so that a happy employee is a productive employee, which gives you good business and it makes business sense. So that's an important thing. The other is in terms of, there is a need to do an in-depth study in each organization, and that is one which must be done. And as Manish says, that there cannot be one size fits all approach. You cannot have a broad-based approach to this. Each organization, its business, its sectoral issues are very unique, and we need to understand the ecosystem and then devise certain preventive, proactive, as you say, preventive mechanisms which will help people not even reach there, rather, in terms of stress. The other thing is organization. What I'm just listing out something which organizations can do is in terms of providing enough training to employees to improve their competence to do a given job. Normally, stress will happen when the demands of the work and the competence, there is a huge mismatch. And what kind of competence is required needs to be again further referred to, but that's one. Clearly letting people know of what is their expectation and always operating within those boundaries. So organizations must have performance management systems which go by the boundaries which have been set in the expectations when the employee joins the organization and how he is working. The other thing which in workplace which we find people are more stressed about is I think lack of clarity in terms of where am I going, the purpose which we are talking about. In life, Manish would do that typically in the meditation and mindfulness programs. At work, the organization is very clear where they need to go, but the individual is hardly given an opportunity to look at what kind of opportunities exist for that person. And this is a constant thought process which goes into the employee's mind as to what is my future in this organization. So organizations must lay out a clear career progression path for the individual, what is feasible and what is not feasible. And I think people are intelligent enough to understand uh, such simple things. If you let them know in clear terms that this is how much is possible without giving all the false promises, I think that will definitely be of great help. In fact, one more thing which is coming to my mind, I think one important thing going next 10 years. I think every organization, as in even in healthcare, uh, I remember the recent event which we had in Hyderabad. There was this discussion around, the support staff which is available in the hospitals. Now, as much as the hospitals are suffering with the lack of counselors, the number of counselors per hospital and the patient intake is an absolute mismatch. Organizations must also have trained counselors attached, empaneled, to whom employees can go and talk in a very safe and secure manner. I remember that earlier in the industrial age and manufacturing setup, we used to have panel doctors for physical health. I think it is high time from the natural perspective and the healthcare perspective. We need to actually get a lot of empaneled counselors, coaches, mindfulness trainers who are empaneled in every organization so that employees can reach out. There can be also digital tools which can be made available, which are vetted by these panel specialists. And I think that will be a good proactive step. Not wait till things go wrong. And one thing which, in terms of symptoms, now I'm just switching here and there, but then I couldn't resist saying it. One of the things which I'm frequently finding in workplace is also a lot of relationship problem between couples, that is at home, because of the workplace stress. There's a lot of, if you go to any high court or any court which is dealing with marriage issues, and I have a lot of friends in the legal industry, and they say that the average age of people who are coming seeking divorce has reduced considerably thanks to all the fast moving, stressful life which we have. So, and the reasons for relationship breakdown are very, very trivial in terms of the workload at home, unable to manage responsibilities, prioritization, inability to say no, as one of the participant has asked the question. All these are contributing to stress, and stressed home leads to stressed workplace. And another thing which I would like to highlight, and particularly post-pandemic, though I didn't want to use this as an example, but women have been suffering quite a bit in the last 2 years post-pandemic, especially working women. And they are the, if we have to call it, the primary, binding force in a family setup. And they are fully stretched because thanks to work from home scenarios, the very limited time women had come, to themselves was when they used to commute to office and come back. That is the time when they used to be with themselves. That was taken away, and they became the first people to wake up at home and the last to get to bed, exhausted totally. And I think a lot needs to be done at home front, and corporates have a great responsibility, as much as a social responsibility, to look at family wellness as an important strategic initiative going forward. So that would probably help us mitigate the problems, and it includes healthcare sector as well.
Thank you, Sri. So we have some questions coming in from audience, and let me just club the ones where there's a common thread. Manish, I'll first come to you. How can I learn to say no? By saying yes to every task that comes my way, I fall under more stress. Linked to that is, how can I distress myself from multiple office tasks that happen simultaneously? So the question is on multitasking and being able to be able to say no. One common thread that comes down here at the end of the questions is confronting or opposing a manager means losing one's job. How can one confront one's manager without this fear? So maybe these three things you can take together and answer.
Yeah, sure. So one is the suggestion here is not confrontation. The suggestion here is around negotiation, because managers are quite amenable to negotiation, but not so amenable to confrontation. Now, there may be a situation where what we are talking about, negotiation, leads to a confrontation. And that is probably a more difficult situation to handle. And most large organizations, I'm not talking about small organizations, do have an escalation path where the same thing can be discussed in groups or can be discussed at the next level. Having said so, one also needs to look at whether the productivity demanded by the manager is in line with the accepted norms, because it's also possible that the person concerned is not having the requisite skills or to sort of meet the normal productivity standards, and that's when things will become difficult, in which case the introspection that whether the person is suited for that particular role and job becomes very, very critical and paramount. And that's a very fair discussion that one without hesitation needs to have with the supervisors. And in my experience, I've never found supervisors being so unreasonable that this discussion cannot be had with the supervisors in a spirit of openness and understanding. Yes, sometimes you will come across situations where this understanding will not be there, and therefore it will become a confrontation, or chances of it becoming a confrontation is high. And therefore, and in such cases, the navigation path will be working laterally through the manager, or sometimes bypassing the manager rather than necessarily entering into a confrontation.
Great.
I think one of the things we have to keep in mind in all this is also our own ambition, because sometimes we may be very ambitious, and when we say ambitious means that we are taking on more than we are either capable of or we want to. And when we take on more than what we want to or we are capable of, then these fears become very, very paramount, and they themselves, by themselves, without any trigger, become a cause of stress. So tempering our expectations, our attitudes towards life, and is also something that will require sort of introspection, and not so much as an institutional mechanism for sorting this particular thing out. Having said so, there are a lot of organizations which have actually made some very positive beginnings in this direction. And I can point out at least one, and that is Amex. So in Amex, at a very strategic level, they have decided, it's a service company, it's a bank, so it's a very service-oriented company, that in their scheme of things, employee happiness will come before even customer satisfaction. So between employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction, they have chosen to prioritize employee satisfaction with the assumption, and obviously there is an assumption behind that. The assumption is that employee satisfaction will automatically lead to higher customer satisfaction and therefore better business growth. This trend, while Amex is a very American company, it has caught in more in European setups. You will find European multinationals paying more attention to the human aspect of their employees compared to most American companies. And also, again, it's a matter of ambition, company culture, and so on. I think Hong Kong Bank is one such organization which very clearly took a very similar step, which is very similar to Amex.
Thanks, Manish. Manish, thank you. Shri, very quickly, we have about a couple of minutes left, but I just want to touch upon this question of appreciation. Just come out in the questions. Appreciation as a culture, in an organization. Is it a stress buster? And what do you suggest? What are your thoughts?
Yes, in fact, as I said, what are the basic human needs? I shared this with you. Need to be valued, need to be respected, need to be heard, need to be listened to, basically, need to be cared for. And one of the ways in which, commitment as defined as the motivation to do the job in a stress-free manner is by giving the positive strokes. And I think the carrot and stick approach, while under pressure, the managers quickly get into the threat mode or the carrot and stick approach. But people need to learn appropriate use of feedback and a positive reinforcing feedback. I think appreciation culture is lacking. And as far as the Indian context goes, the negative approach to feedback is what has been the conditioning for children right from home to school to offices. Everywhere, there is a feeling that performance can be improved if you can actually put high level of negative pressure. So it is like our ranking system, our reward related to ranks and the recognition which you get. I think appreciation needs to be taught, and it starts at home. And I completely relate to that, because especially even in healthcare sector, there is no time together. I talk to so many people in the industry, especially the doctor fraternity. And there is one thing which the intense competition hardly gives them a chance even to think about appreciating a good work. So I think that's a very important aspect.
Thank you.
And last point before we sign off, Siddharth, because on the confronting manager part, two things which people need to work on. One is their competence, the other is financial literacy. If these two things are taken care, I think they will be in much comfortable position to apply the tools which we teach them.
Thank you. Fantastic. That I wish we had more time to continue this conversation. But I would like to conclude here. This entire episode would be posted, the live recording would be posted in NATHEALTHseries.com, which is our blog webpage. I would like to thank both Manish and Shri for getting their valued thoughts into this. All their details, links, emails would be on the blog site, should you like to directly get in touch with them and get any clarification to some of these conversations. We'll come back again next Thursday, 4 p.m. with another interesting topic. On that note, I would like to end here by thanking the audience first, all those who have listened, who have logged in, listened to the live streams, as well as Shri, Manish, the entire NATHEALTH Secretariat team, Anesha, Jayata, the Impact Public Relations private team, for organizing this webinar today. Till we see again, thank you so much and have a pleasant evening. Bye-bye. Namaste.